Welcome everyone to Forward Thinking, my new In Conversation TV series. I'm Associate Professor Art Phillips, and today's focus is entrepreneurship and work integrated learning. We have a very special guest today, Dr. Frank Alafaci, President of the Australian Business Summit Council. He has recently been appointed to the Board of Advisors of the International Youth Association. He is also the Editor-in-Chief of EKONOMOS Business Affairs magazine, and was article contributor in Economics and Finance in the Fortune Weekly magazine. Frank lectures in the postgraduate stream at the Universal Business School, campuses in Sydney, Melbourne, and Adelaide, in corporate strategy and in project management. It's a great honor to have Frank here today. Welcome, Dr. Alafaci. Good to see you.
Thank you very much. It's an honor and a privilege to be here, and thank you very much for having me.
Sei italiano. You're Italiano.
Sì, di origine italiana, of Italian origin, like yourself.
Anche a me,
Yes.
Perché my nome is Di Filippo, not Phillips, but unfortunately was changed when Grandpa
So we're lucky, Art, in a way, because we can conduct this interview either in Italian or in English, but for the benefit of the community at large, let's conduct it in English.
I think we do two versions.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay.
That would be great, yeah.
Okay.
Now, look, fantastic. Look, I just really want to have a casual chat because work integrated learning is really, really important for students, for all students around the world.
Yes.
And especially at our school, that's one of the things that we actually the school hangs their hat on that, and I think it's really important. So you're a very well-respected lecturer. I mean, I know that I've actually watched some of your lectures sort of in awe, and I lecture a bit too, but I just love your work, really great. And you've been awarded many, many accolades along the way from various institutions, and students have always commented and appreciate your really friendly style of teaching. Tell us about your passion about teaching and how you approach that methodology.
Well, first of all, I'm very humbled by your kind words, and I have to say that I've picked up a few useful tips from you as well. So thank you very, very much. Well, the way I see it is I think it's important when teaching students to get to know a little bit about their background, given that I teach many students from international backgrounds. Yeah. So get to know a little bit about their background, get to know a little bit about their aims and their ambitions, get to know a little bit about the best way to go about teaching them, because students from different backgrounds have different ways of following classes, following the mode of teaching, understanding, communicating, sharing, and so forth. So it's important to understand who it is that you're talking to, what you are talking to them about, and then pitch your delivery style and the contents of what it is that you have to say specifically to make sure that you actually meet their expectations and enable them to learn, progress, and go out into the real world and establish a good reputation for themselves. Yeah. So that's in a nutshell. In terms of more specifics, it's very, very important that you don't just focus on theory. It's very, very important that if you communicate something along the lines of a discussion about the value chain analysis or Porter's 5 Forces competitive analysis model or the VRIO framework, and I'm talking to you about corporate strategy, it's very, very important that you show the students how those concepts, theories, and models pan out into the real world by following up a discussion of those theories, concepts, and models with case studies.
Right, so you actually use case studies?
I use a lot of case studies. Yeah. I focus more, to be honest with you, on case studies than on the theory. Yeah. I like to talk about theory in basic terms, follow that up with a case study, delve further into the nitty-gritty of the theory, and follow that up with more detailed discussions about more elaborate case studies. And that seems to have worked well for me over the past 10 years that I've been teaching at UBSS.
Yeah, no, fantastic. And you actually have, one-on-one conversations with all the students quite often. I mean, I think you work mostly online. Previously, pre-COVID, different or?
To be perfectly honest with you, I'm the sort of person who likes to teach face-to-face. I like to look at people in their faces to see, their reactions, if they're engaged, if they're bored, if they're confused. But unfortunately, since COVID, or during COVID, we had to transition to an online mode of delivery, which we've done extremely well at UBSS. And I haven't transitioned back to face-to-face teaching, but I've gotten so used to it that I've developed a pretty good methodology of engaging with the students. So basically, it's all online. I've got about 350 students in my corporate strategy class, 350 students in my project management class. It's very difficult to make sure that all of them are actually sitting in front of the computer, listening to what you have to say, even though they've all logged in. So I throw a few questions out there, generic questions. At random. And then perhaps I pick on one or two students, but in a nice way.
Sure.
If they happen not to be around, I make a joke of it. I say, oh, he's probably gone off to make a Uber delivery or to have a cup of coffee with his friends because he's found my teaching too overbearing and so on. But I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Combine a little bit of seriousness with a more jovial attitude.
Yeah. So you actually are very well prepared for each lecture. I would imagine, as I do, you have a slideshow. I think I've actually seen your corporate strategy slideshow, which is amazing, by the way. Very well designed, you know. How far off do you go off of each one each week? Or do you stick to the same plan? Or do you sort of wing it and feel the crowd, the audience, like a performer?
The plan is the plan. I mean, there are lecture slides there, which I would expect the students to go through a week before the webinar, the 2-hour webinar that I conduct. Then I go through each individual slide, focusing on the key concepts contained therein, but I also have hard copy notes with additional information that I feed to the students to give them a better understanding of the generic points about the key issues and topics that are in the PDF slides that I run through.
Right.
Because these slides do not really contain much in the way of case studies, I also have some case studies from my hard copy notes that I share with the students, and I get them to write down the information. I say to them, I'd like you to write this down. And then I make some comments, and then I'd say, I'd like you also write this down. And they follow me, and if I need to repeat things, I repeat things. But generally, I get things done within 2 hours. The tricky part of the 3-hour class is the tutorial session. Because I have 350 students in one class and about 350 in another class, what I get them to do is I get them to do the tutorial exercises at home, come armed with their answers the week later, and I get them to post their answers on the chat message box. So I run through each individual answer with the student and all the other students during the course of the tutorial session. But because the tutorial session is only 1 hour in length, there's so many answers that I can go through, which means it's very, very difficult to cover a different tutorial exercise every week.
I get it.
So I may spend 3 or 4 tutorial sessions going through all the answers to one particular tutorial exercise. But I think it's very, very important for me to do it live. So the students hear
other questions.
I run through their answers during a live session so they can get direct feedback from me rather than me going away, getting them to email me their answers, then writing some sort of a written explanation or comment about it. I think it's better for you to communicate directly to students.
No, that's great. Great technique. That's a good little trick. So that's a lot of students. 350, 750, 800, whatever it is. That's a lot of, How do you keep track?
Attendance is automatically recorded each time they log in. And I during the tutorial sessions, when I have a look at their answers, I grade them there and then, and I take down their names, or I just have their grades next to the class list of students. And then at the end of the course, when I enter their final grades for the course, I give them a class participation mark out of 15, in addition to the other assessments that they have to do.
Project management. What a great, interesting course. Project management, talk to us a little bit about, I don't know if I'm right, 5 phases. Is it 5 phases?
All right. Well, it depends. Some people would say it's 4 phases. I tend to focus on 4 phases, and I'll explain that to you in a little while. But project management, the first thing, of course, you have to know about project management is what do we mean by a project?
That's right. I mean, it's not a everyday normal thing.
Exactly. So a project would be a temporary endeavour undertaken to produce a unique product, service, or outcome. And the 2 fundamental characteristics of a project are that it's temporary, it has a specific start and end date. And it results in something that's unique, because if you want to be successful, and I'm talking about supremely successful in life, along the lines of Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, Ray Kroc, and Buffet, and all those other people, is you have to produce a product or service that's different to what other people are offering. Different in terms of innovation, different in terms of user friendliness, different in terms of the aesthetic appeal, and different in terms of the ongoing customer service that you provide to your client should they experience difficulties with the product or services they are using it. So they are very, very important things to bear in mind. And of course, another important thing, may I add, is prime mover advantage. You've got to be the first off the mark, and then allow everybody else to play catch up to you.
Prime mover advantage.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I've never heard that term. That's a good term.
And, don't wait for opportunities to come to you. Go out and seek opportunities, take advantage of those opportunities, and make sure that you are the first to do so.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Be bold, be brave, be passionate.
Yeah.
And go for it. Ray Kroc, interesting. Because I don't know if anybody's ever seen, well, you may not know who he is, but it's the gentleman that's responsible for the success of McDonald's.
That's
very,
correct.
very, very, very
Yeah.
early on. He didn't own it at first, but he sort of took it on as an agent. Really incredible story from the U.S. You know, all those sort of stories are really great to read for students because it just really shows, you know, how something like that actually eventuated. Yeah. The drive-through hamburger and the McDonald's Golden Arches, which are an M, and it's also some of my students, because I make them analyze it, say we think it's French fries and a vat of ketchup or tomato sauce.
Yeah.
That's what it looks like.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. Projects. So when somebody takes on a project, there's phases of the project. You know, what there's initiating it.
Okay, there's the defining phase.
Yeah.
There's the planning phase. There's the execution phase, and there's the closing phase.
Right.
So the defining phase will consist of establishing the scope of the project in terms of size, in terms of extent, in terms of cost, overall cost, determining who the stakeholders are, determining what the resources are in terms of people, based on the number of people, based on their educational qualifications, based on their practical experience, resources in terms of equipment, again, the amount of equipment and the quality of that equipment, and resources in terms of the raw materials that you procure from the suppliers that you then turn into finished, polished, optimum, premium, top-notch products and services as well.
Right. And I guess the trick is how the leader or the person in charge of it monitors it.
Absolutely, because then at that particular point in time, you have to determine who it is that's going to serve as the project manager for the entire project. And the project manager has to be an authoritative person, not an authoritarian person.
Yeah. Is a project manager sort of considered a leader?
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
The project manager is the leader of the project. The project manager supervises a number of teams that work on and what I'm going to discuss next, and that is the planning phase. So what happens is that the project manager puts together a team or teams of people who have been drawn from different units, different divisions of the organisation. They're called upon to work together for the duration of the project, and then at the end of the project they get sent back to their original work within the organisation. So you create a number of teams. You also work out exactly what the project is about in terms of developing a work breakdown structure, which consists of all the components that make up the project, known as work packages. Then you cost those work packages. You work out how much those work packages cost, how many people are going to be assigned to the work packages, how much time is required to complete each work package.
For delivery,
For delivery. You work out what the end results of those work packages are going to be, a term referred to as deliverables. And I'll give you an example in a minute because pursuant to what I'd said earlier, you teach the theory and then you follow it up with a concrete example. And I'll show you what I mean in a minute. And then you've got to do something else which is very, very, very important. With everything that you do in life, you need to look at any risks that may impact the project. And the concrete example I wanted to give you in terms of the work breakdown structure is the construction of a house. So the first work package will be laying the foundations, the second building the walls, the third building the roof, the fourth the plumbing work, the fifth the electrical work, and the sixth the landscaping work. So you've got a number of work packages that
they're all different packages,
self-contained pieces of work undertaken by different teams with different end results. And so a product or service can be defined as the sum total of the deliverables of all the work packages that make up the project.
Got it. Yeah.
So the planning phase is, of course, extremely, extremely, extremely important.
Yeah.
And there are two ways of working out what the cost and what the time frame and what the resources and everything else associated with the project are. There's a top-down approach, which is a generic approach from the executives that communicate information in terms of cost, time, etc., to the people who are actually going to be doing the work.
Right.
And then you have the bottom-up approach, which is an evaluation of the project in terms of time, cost, and resources undertaken by the people who are actually going to do the work.
That happens before.
That happens after.
After the
top down.
The top down. Okay.
And then there's a reconciliation process that goes about.
Yeah.
And if the project costs more and it's going to take longer and it involves more resources, then the project manager communicates that information to the board, and then the board makes a decision as to whether they still want to proceed with the project or not.
I see. Right. Wow. Really complicated.
Yeah.
So I guess, the first thing I think about, with project management, we all do projects, but like projects that I do, like album releases aren't really projects as part of my business, but a project would be building a new studio, for example, yeah?
Yes.
Or a project would be, if you're John Holland, what project management would that take to build a tunnel or a road or a bridge? That's what they do. That's, it's massive, isn't it? The teams involved there, and, this is not an easy question to answer, and I'm sure it probably can't be answered, but roughly how long would you think, like a John Holland would take, if I think they're the one that did the tunnels, I think it was, pre-planning before they even scope it out?
I don't know how much it would,
How would
how
that
long
be?
it would take, but I certainly can appreciate that a lot of work and effort goes into the preparation part,
Yeah.
and then obviously a DA and a BA need to be lodged with the relevant authorities, and then may make a determination as to the sort of impact that the project is going to have, not only at the end of the project, but during the construction phase, in terms of disruption to the traffic flow, in terms of noise pollution, in terms of air pollution, in terms of all sorts of things. So probably you can say, depending on the nature of the project, that the longest phase of the project will be the approval phase, because sometimes you submit something for approval and then you have to amend it several times before the relevant authority gives you the go-ahead to proceed with the project.
Well, that's right, because it's not just council, it's government, it's state.
Absolutely.
It's all that.
Absolutely,
yeah. But those are just massive projects. And I look at all those, people like working on the road all through the time, and I think, wow, who's controlling that?
Yes.
Yeah. So, generally, is there like one top leader and then every team has its own leader? Or
okay. So there's the project manager, and then you've got the various teams, and the various team can appoint a team leader, or they can rotate.
I see.
That role.
Yeah.
Ideally, the project manager would supervise the whole thing. There'd be a series of teams with a team leader who would consist of the person with the most authority. Yeah. The most authority in terms of that person's educational qualifications and particularly practical experience, because there's a big difference between theory and practice. I know a lot of people who have lots of university degrees, but they don't have much in the way of practical experience. So the ideal situation would be to have a team of people with a lot of experience and newcomers, people who are hungry in terms they're fresh out of university, they want to make a name for themselves, they want to thrust themselves in the midst of things, they want to progress, they want to advance, and they don't want to do simple tasks all the time. They want to be assigned tasks that they find challenging, that will give them an opportunity to learn, to progress and advance through the ranks of an organisation. Yeah. There were two other categories: execution, which you translate the plan into effective action, and you monitor what you're doing, and you control what you do at the same time to make sure that it doesn't deviate or digress off track. And then you've got the closing phase, which consists of you bringing the whole thing to an end, handing the product or service to the client, make sure that all the bills have been paid, make sure that the client's happy, and of course conduct a post-implementation evaluation of the project to focus particularly on what went wrong, so that you don't repeat the error of your ways. That's right. When you undertake a new project. Exactly, yeah. Risk management. Yes. How to mitigate risk. Well, all depends what the risk is. Big topic. It's a focus of an entire lecture called Risk Management in Week 5. And I teach my students that with everything that we do in life, there's a certain amount of risk associated with it. So how do you go about managing risk? The first thing is you've got to identify what the risk is.
Yes.
In terms of the nature of the risk, in terms of its origins. Then you proceed to a more detailed analysis of the risk. It's like putting something underneath a microscope to find out what it actually consists of in terms of its individual components. Because the more you know about a risk, the better you'll be able to prepare yourself to actually prevent that risk from occurring, or to nip it in the bud as soon as it does occur. So once you've identified and analysed the risk, then you assess it. You make a determination of the likelihood of that risk presenting itself. You make a determination as to how that risk is going to impact. You make a determination as to the severity of that impact, whether it's a mild or moderate, more severe or extremely severe impact. And based on those sorts of things, then you work out how to deal with the risk. And there are 4 ways of dealing with risk. You either avoid the risk by undertaking a course of action that skirts or circumvents that risk. You can accept the risk because you know that even though the likelihood of that risk occurring is high, the impact it's going to have on your project is minimal, so you can absorb the risk and keep it on the right track. You can transfer the risk in terms of outsourcing, dealing with the risk to an independent third party that's better able to do so than you are, because they know more about how to deal with the risk and they have better resources than you do to deal with the risk. Or you can take out an insurance policy.
Right.
But like when you go and buy something, you take out a warranty, a 3-year warranty on something. So if it malfunctions and breaks down during the first year or so, you're either reimbursed for the cost of having the thing repaired, or you can have it replaced altogether. And the 4th one would be to actively mitigate or reduce the risk. So by preparing a series of contingency plans. So if the risk starts to impact adversely on your project, you activate one of those contingency plans that deals directly with that risk, and you try to nip it in the bud, or you try to eliminate it gradually before it has an overall negative effect that will result in the failure of the product. In the failure of the project that you're working on.
The project, yeah. Wow, amazing. That's fantastic, Students are really getting a massive benefit from your lectures.
Well, I've been teaching it for 10 years, so I know it like the back of my hand. And I'm not going to mess around with my students. When I teach, either I give it 100% or I don't teach at all, because at the end of the day, my reputation is at stake and their futures are at stake as well.
Love it. I particularly love the fact that you just said what you said about the 100%, because why I called my company 101 Music, Proprietary Limited, because my grandpa, who's Italiano, he passed away, of course, always said to me, Arturo, whatever you do in life, you do it 100%, actually 101, or don't bother doing it at all.
Absolutely.
That's what he
said.
That's great that you said that, because, I believe in that, And my grandpa was a bricklayer and a mandolin player. I don't know how that worked with his hands, but he was a great bricklayer, and he was very meticulous about how he cemented every little brick in the wall.
My uncle was a great mandolin player.
Oh, yeah. We should have a jam.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so your work and your passion as the president of the Australian Business Summit Council, how long has that been going on?
It's been going on since December of 2018.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
If you take the 2 years away of COVID, we've been active for about 4 years.
Yeah.
And we're doing quite well.
What do you do exactly?
Well, it's a not-for-profit organisation. It basically does a few things. The first 2 things are pretty generic. It promotes business within Australia. The second thing is it promotes business between Australia and the rest of the world, because we have lots of connections throughout the world.
Export markets?
Absolutely.
Import,
The third thing that it does is it actually acts as a forum for the propagation and the discussion and debate of economic policies that lead to a more sustainable, a more successful, a more durable Australian economy. And the 4th thing it does, and this is our trump card, this is what's really put us on the map, it publishes a business affairs magazine, an annual business affairs magazine called EKONOMOS, which is a Greek play on the word economics, that we publish annually, and to which ambassadors, high commissioners and prominent business leaders contribute articles. And that's why we have very, very strong connections to the diplomatic community. And that's how we've been able to establish connections with organisations throughout the world. I'm also very, very friendly with a number of newspaper owners, which means that whenever we have our annual gala dinners, to which you have attended, but you've attended as an article contributor and as a performer. When we have our big annual gala dinners to promote or to officially launch our magazines, we get a lot of people attending them, 250 the last one, 15 ambassadors, 10 consuls generals, trade commissioners, presidents of business councils, presidents of chambers of commerce. So that's the big thing that we do. But we precede that a couple of months earlier with a media conference. Now, the purpose of the media conference, which is for about 100 people, is to actually promote the forthcoming publication of the magazine, the issue of the year. And we usually have a formal dinner with a panel, which is made up of usually a couple of ambassadors, a politician. The last politician we had was Damien Tudor, who's the Shadow Treasurer, New South Wales Treasurer. And we had the President of the Arab Bank Australia, and I served as a moderator. And then we opened up the panel discussion to questions from the floor, from the audience. We also have two smaller, elite, exclusive networking events that we hold in September and October or November or December, I think, at the Langham Hotel, in the best suite in the hotel for about 30 people, where we invite one or two ambassadors from Canberra to come up to give a presentation about doing business between their country and our country. We go through our 2,000, 3,000 network connections to find out who will be interested in doing business with, say, Cambodia or Algeria or Mauritius, and then we invite 30 of them to attend that particular networking session.
Fantastic.
So basically 4 events per year, and we're doing very, very, very well.
Yeah, no, sounds like it. So you get a lot of support from the Australian government?
Well, we don't get much support from the Australian government. We think that Austrade perhaps sees us as a bit of a competitor.
Oh, do they? Okay, yeah.
But, you know, we're very, very happy with what we do because we don't just blah, 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 blah. We actually go out and get things done at a practical level through the magazine, through the networking events that we have, through the networking events that we co-host with other organisations, and through the articles that I write and publish in the various newspapers.
No, fantastic, because you're really bringing all those communities, ethnic communities together, right, to talk about, you know, and it's all about with the benefits for Australasia.
And it's all non-profit.
It's all non-profit.
Also non-profit. I've always been community-minded. I was the president of the Rotary Club of Five Dock for 2 consecutive years.
Oh, that's right. The
president of an Italian association. I did it voluntarily because my wife and I were all for community service. And the Australian Business Summit Council is all about serving the Australian business community. Yeah,
important, isn't it? New technologies. I mean, AI in particular. I mean, which
AI can be a plus. AI can be a negative when it comes to teaching. So AR is all about machines performing human tasks, which of course is good in a way. It can be good for businesses in the manufacturing industry whereby you have what's called the increasing automation of the workplace and things get done faster, things get done more cost efficiently. The downside, of course, is that means that people will be more unemployed than before because you don't need as many people to work for a business as you've done in the past. So that's a downside. The other downside when it comes to teaching is we already do something that's called plagiarism checking through a software program called Turnitin. And Turnitin basically scours through the entire internet to see whether and the extent to which students have copied and pasted information that they've found on the internet into their assessments. So it's pretty easy to pick that up because it always comes back with a Turnitin percentage report, say 70% plagiarism, and it lists all the documents that they've plagiarised from, and it tells you which part of the documents they have plagiarised from. With artificial intelligence, it's much, much, much harder to pick that up. So when we do a Turnitin search, it'll come back with a Turnitin percentage, but it'll also tell you that they've used artificial intelligence to the extent of, say, 50 or 60%. But it doesn't tell you how they have done that.
Uh-huh.
And so it makes it very, very difficult for a lecturer to grade them properly. Now, you can discard that altogether and just focus on the Turnitin percentage result, or you can deduct marks based on the percentage of artificial intelligence that features in their assessments.
Appears, yeah.
So I see it as a good thing,
Yeah.
but I see it as a bad thing in terms of the two issues that I've just elucidated for you.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there are pros and cons to AI
Yeah.
for sure. I use it positively, of course, in my business to help search things. Robotic searching is really
Yeah.
successful. But the real worry, well, especially in my industry, a lot of industries, is that copyright infringement.
Yes.
People
Yeah.
are creating things.
Yeah.
I remember somebody told me once. He said, I mean, I'm a writer. Why would I go to AI to
Yeah.
write? Because it's a human element. It's really important. They're passionate about that. So so I think AI, it'll curtail itself, and hopefully it'll be a okay future disruptor in a way that it won't be too negative to the
I
world.
had something else I want
Yeah.
to say. Remember that we're teaching a lot of international students
Yeah.
whose first language is not English.
Mm.
And I try to get a way around artificial intelligence by trying to get the students to understand that if you engage in such unethical practices as plagiarism, artificial intelligence, the use of paraphrasing tools, how on earth is your English going to improve?
That's right.
At the end of the day, you want your English to improve. The better your English is, the more likely it is for you to do well in business, because English is the international language of business.
Exactly.
And some of them really take that on board, and I can see from their next tutorial answers that they've made an active effort to try to put their answers in their own words.
Mm-hmm.
And if they make grammatical errors, I don't put them down. I never put anybody down. I said, well, that's great. I can see that you're trying to write in your own words. I've picked up a few grammatical errors, but that's to your credit, because at least you are trying to do things properly.
Yeah.
And they get really, really heartened and encouraged by that. And the next time around, more students have tried to put things in their own words.
Yeah,
so, that's something that I try to drum into them.
No, that's great, because they learn from other people's
Yeah.
examples.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's why classwork is actually really, really good, is that because they all can hear each other's results and et cetera, So yeah, your advice to up and coming entrepreneurs and students would
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Work hard,
Mm.
be determined,
Mm.
don't be discouraged by failure.
Mm-hmm.
Thomas Edison said that genius is 1% inspiration, 99% perspiration. Okay.
Yeah.
Be careful who you work with. Choose your collaborators very, 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 very carefully.
Yeah.
Try to be innovative. Try to be to reach out to as many people as you possibly can. Network a lot. Go to events. Meet people who are better than you are and pay their expenses in terms of taking them out to lunch, taking them out to dinner. Learn from them. Build and nurture and cultivate relationships over time, because they will come to prove to be very, very beneficial in the long term when you need assistance from them, and they'll know you well.
Yeah.
And then they will be more than happy to assist you and serve as mentors to you. Prime mover advantage is something that I mentioned before. Be out there, be the first to be out there, and whatever it is that you do in life, in whatever sphere, whatever arena, in whatever area or field of expertise that you want to engage in, do something 100% or do not do it at all. Mm-hmm. So that, in a nutshell, is my advice to give to people.
Yeah, love it. Fantastic. The importance of lifelong learning.
Yes.
We keep learning, don't we?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, if somebody says to me that I don't need to learn anything else because I know everything that I need to know, well, that's arrogance and it's stupidity, and that will act as a brake on progress, on your progress.
Yeah.
No, you've got to be aware that things are changing all the time, and you need to pursue a strategy that's flexible, that's adaptable to the changes that are ongoing in society. Because if you don't do that, you'll pretty much end up like a company like Kodak that failed to adapt to the mobile phone, and Kodak eventually went into bankruptcy.
Yeah.
It's beginning to pull itself out of its doldrums.
Yeah.
But you've got to adapt to innovation and change.
No, that's right. You have to be smart. There's a really good movie, everybody, to watch called BlackBerry, which is about the telephone BlackBerry that were at the top of their game for a long time. it's a great little documentary to watch. It's a real life story, and it showed how Apple were just a little bit that farther ahead in terms of what they did with the touch tone thing as opposed to the keypad on the phone. And it's a really interesting one to watch because I mean I got a lot out of watching that movie, thinking amazing. So yeah, important to always look around the corner.
Yes.
Don't feel that comfortable about your success at the moment because it's going to change. Without being negative and all that stuff. Just always being aware, I think, is important for success.
And I forgot one thing that I want to mention, and prepare well for risk, for what may go wrong. Remember what John Lennon said? Life is what happens to you when you're busy making other plans.
Yes.
And look at what happened to the poor gentleman.
I know. Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah. Good point. Yeah, exactly right. Frank, it's been just fantastic to have you here.
Thank you very much.
Really fantastic.
Thank you so much.
I really appreciate your expertise. I think the students at the school in particular are going to get a lot out of this, And the next time I'll have you back, we'll talk about corporate strategy.
Anytime.
That'd be great.
Thank you very much.
One thing, you're welcome. Thank you for having as a guest on my little show. I'm also the director of the Center for Entrepreneurship at the Universal Business School here in Sydney, of course, and we have a situation where we have fellows of the school, and the school has decided to give Dr. Alafaci a fellowship to the Universal Business School. So I would like to present that to you.
Well, thank you very
today.
much. I'm at a loss for words. I don't know what to say.
Because I happen to have it here.
Oh, thank you, Art. Thank you very much.
And we'll take a.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for watching our show today on Forward Thinking TV and Entrepreneurship Work Integrated Learning. Looking forward to having you join us next month. We'll have another guest. And please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Would be greatly appreciated. And the website for Forward Thinking TV is forwardthinkingtv, all one word, .com.au. Thank you very much. Over and out. We'll see you next month.